Now, recently, South Africans were talking excitedly about 10 babies being born, a new record. Then that turned to questions being asked about where were the 10 babies? And then we began to talk about journalism because Pretoria news editor Piet Rampedi, who stands by his story, has not been able to produce any evidence that the babies were ever born. I'm now joined by Advocate Mahlodi Sam Muofhe, Director General at the State Security Agency responsible for the domestic branch. He's written an opinion piece saying that there should be limits, in fact, on the right to freedom of expression. Thank you for joining us, Advocate. Let's start with your basic argument. As a journalist, I'm appalled by what's happened here in terms of journalism itself. But many people are chilled by any talk of restrictions on the freedom of expression.
Good evening, Francis. Yeah, which is true. I'm a strong proponent of freedom of expression. But I also say in my opinion piece that no right is absolute. What Piet Rampedi has done has brought journalism into disrepute, and I hope that journalists won't sit back because it is the profession on the line. It's a disgrace. We have many good journalists in South Africa, and I don't think they deserve to be disgraced by Piet Rampedi. That's one part. But the other part is that for his own ulterior motive, which perhaps he knows best, Hosiami Sithole, it's a young lady, vulnerable in terms of even the UN treaty and even in terms of our own policies. Piet abused the young lady for his own ends. I think we should all rally behind a vulnerable Hosiami Sithole. I don't think that she knew what Piet was trying to achieve when she used her.
Okay.
That's a very good indictment, yes.
When you say limiting this freedom, at what point should Piet Rampedi have been limited? Should the story have been checked by authorities before it was published, or should there be swift action afterwards when it was found that nobody could confirm the evidence of these babies? That's important. Where do you think he should have been stopped?
I think, to be honest, any editor or sub-editor would not have passed that story because it didn't even pass the basic principles of journalism.
Yeah.
Piet writes his own truth.
But besides that, Advocate, Piet is the editor, so he was the one who decided that the story would run. But you were saying now we should stop propaganda in your opinion piece. People are very concerned when somebody linked to the State Security Agency that itself has been accused of abuses. We've heard in the State Capture Commission of government officials being accused of abuses, advocating for any sort of censorship. We know that in some countries stories have to be vetted by the government. So tell us how far you think this should go.
Francis. Yeah, it's true. I'm the head of the domestic branch, but I'm sure you're well aware that I also practiced in the craft of journalism as well. I basically wrote this thing as a lawyer, as a human rights lawyer, to say that no right is absolute. Let's think away the State Security Agency, just to follow the basic journalistic principles that no editor would have passed that story. Now, in that group, I think there is an editor at large or editor-in-chief. So I would imagine Piet is accountable to whoever is the editor-in-chief of that publication. But what is disturbing is that seemingly, even in the whole group, they are the only ones who seem to be standing by him, even when they know that, by the way, even the right of expression, freedom of speech, by the way, it is limited. It is not absolute. So one is not saying
You're not advocating state censorship. That is what you're saying, which I'm relieved by. I mean, look, what has happened has really brought journalism into disrepute. Perhaps there is some recourse, though. The Gauteng government looking at taking IOL or Pretoria News to court, because actually there has been defamation now. Piet Rampedi is saying that there's been a wholesale cover-up of these babies being born. So surely he has to produce evidence if he's going to say things like that. Do you think this will be sorted out in the courts?
I think we must applaud what the provincial government in Gauteng is doing. I would imagine that South African Human Rights Commission as well, because this squarely falls within its ambit. The rights of young Nkosiyame Sithole, right to privacy, right to dignity, Piet chose to disregard all those rights. But I'm still putting the ball squarely again in the profession. And I know that the profession is limited because this publication does not belong to any authority. It does not belong to SANEF or not to, so they account to themselves. Yeah. But I think journalists, senior journalists, should be able to stand up. I don't think it's a story which must just be allowed to go to rest, because next week after next, we'll be hit by another story.
Yeah.
And it is so dangerous that we've got peddlers in the country who are busy causing havoc. Anybody and everyone can just post something, and the next thing, the gullible society goes for it. I mean, there is just no ways in which somebody could have been pregnant with 10 babies and it doesn't bring some excitement in South Africa.
Yeah, okay, well, we have to leave it there, Advocate. Thank you for giving us your opinion. You've also penned an opinion piece. And let's be clear, journalists across the country have spoken out about what they see as a travesty of journalistic practice here. That was Advocate Mahlodi Sam Muofhe, Director General at the State Security Agency responsible for the domestic branch.